Rahmatullah Nabil, thank you so much for coming on the show to share your stories of Afghanistan.
It's my pleasure.
Let's take you back to as far back as as you can remember. I mean, you're born in the same province as I was, in Ghazni province. Um, how was Rahmatullah Nabil's childhood like? What kind of a child were you? What type of an environment you grew up in?
Yeah, thanks a lot. This is, I'm very happy just to share for the first time my childhood, my this wish for my country, and also all the hopes which I'm sharing, which are common of the millions of Afghan. But unfortunately, the war, the all these ups and downs, we face different, time of our history. I was born in Jagatu district of, now it's under Wardak. At that time, it was under Ghazni province. I was 1 year old when my father passed away. My mother became very young, widow when she was only 16. And then after, death of my father, she got a lot of serious depression and what you call stroke, and she became ill. And then my uncles who were working with the government as military officers and also civil servant in Kabul, they took me and my mom to Kabul from the village. And then my mom was in hospital for several years, 3, 4 years, I think, in Aliabad Hospital. At that time, Aliabad Hospital was more, general hospital. And then I grown up with my grandmom, and till third grade, my uncle, my aunt, they were not telling me that this is your mom, this is your grandmom. And because of that, I was calling my mom Abu, but I was calling my grandmother mother or Adi. Anyway, I went to school in Kabul. I was in sixth, seventh grade when this change happened, the coup against King Dawood happened, and new era took over, came to Afghanistan. Still, I continue in Kabul school. I went to Ghazi High School. And then in Ghazi High School, I was in 10th grade. This was the time when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. And in 10th grade, at that time, they were planning to send the Afghan students to Moscow or to Soviet Union for. At that time, they were donating new jet fighters to Afghanistan, to the Afghan government, and they were taking, we say it, talented with good rank students from different high schools to Soviet Union to be trained and as a pilot for jet fighter. But anyway, this was the time that my mom already went back to my village. And then I left the school of Ghazi High School and went to my village. Over there, this was the situation. Either you should be with Mujahideen or you should be against Mujahideen. Being in the village, you could not reject it. I had two uncles, means cousin of my father. They were commanders of Mujahideen. One was with Hizb Islami Hikmatyar, and one was with Mahaz Islami of Pir Gilani. In the meantime, they were like Khan and Malik. Normally, they were participating in jirgas or, dispute resolving issues. And
they were kind of active village elders, as was community elders in the community.
Exactly. This was a mechanism, a system in the village when there was any dispute or on land or on other issue. Then they were collecting elders and they were uh, both sides sharing their, topic, or the reason for dispute, and then they decide who should, gain the final. 3 years I was part of that, and sometimes, being 17, 18 years old, carrying a gun was, very different, excitement. Uh, uh, because the way the structure of the society at that time was shaped, that the carrying gun was a sort of pride. And then the turning point was that there was an attack on the Russian or the Soviet Union's convoy in Dasht-e-Toop area of Wardak, which is nearby Sheikhobad, very flat area. I was part of that. And then after the attack and after the fighting was finished, in the evening, a group of, young, let's say Mujahideen, was assigned to go and check what has been left behind this convoy. Yeah. And I was also, because could read and write, I was also part of that. We were collecting, these different, gun, ammunition. And then I find a letter, a handwriting letter with left it behind from one of the soldiers, and that was in Russian. I could not read it in Russian, but anyway, that somehow, put me and okay, I should take it, and I should find out what is written in this
letter.
Yeah. Anyway, I took it. And I got slightly injured during the day. My whole, cloth was, with blood. And anyway, after 3 days, when I came back to my village, and somehow my mom got this news that because on the highway after the this attack, when we were stopping the vehicles to find out the consequences of this attack, those who were coming from Kabul, because it was a huge attack, and Russian or Soviet Union at that time, they lost a lot of vehicles in their tanks, like 17, 16 of them. Somebody saw me and they posted this message to my village, and that my mom got this news that I was in this location and I was, injured. But anyway, when I went to my village back, and I find out that my mom, she didn't eat for 3 days after having this. And then that was one, she said that, son, go back, resume your study somewhere. It was one thing. But there was one of my friends, after a few days I saw him. He studied in Soviet Union of that time. But after, returning from Moscow, he came to the village, and he could read and write, read the Russian. I shared that paper with him. This was a letter from a mom to her son, which was part of this red, the Russian soldiers or Soviet Union soldiers. And he was also the only son of his mom. And it was written that when you return back, everything is ready, then you will get married, and there was a lot of hope in that.
The hopes of a mother for her son.
Exactly. Yeah, and that put me, doesn't matter, it was a Russian or Soviet mother, that put me exactly in the same situation of my mom. example, if just I compare, at that
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
and then that I decided to quit carrying gun, and then I went to Peshawar with some friends because at that time we could not go back to Kabul, and at that time the
yeah, yeah,
situation.
yeah, yeah. You'd already experienced being a mujahid. Now you know.
Yeah, in the distance between the rural area and urban area, uh, in the distance between two ideologies were
Mm.
already
Yeah.
was huge. Uh, this was more difficult to survive. However, when I went back to Peshawar, I resumed my study in one of the refugee schools. Uh, that was different experience
Hmm.
for 3 years, because at that time the mentality was exactly like the among the Mujahideen was exactly like the current Taliban.
Mm.
You spend time in Kabul or study in Kabul, you means you're not a good Muslim. You should resume your. Although I was 3 years at my village, and also even when I was at Kabul, this was very common practice in all over Afghanistan. Doesn't matter whether this was Pashtun area or Tajik area. We were sent. The kids were sent to school to mosque in addition to schools. For example, the first book which we were learning in addition to Quran, Holy Quran, it was Gulistan, it was Bustan, it was Panjganj, call it
Yeah.
Panj Kitab, it was
Yeah.
Farsi. And then, you know, however, when I graduated from high school, I got the top rank in the entire high school. That gave me some to chance to breathe because
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
all different subjects, whether it was um, science or whether it was social or religious subjects. After graduation, there was two choice. One was the jihadi universities like Dawat, like Jamiat had its own, Hizb Islami had its own, Ittihad Islami of Sayaf had its own universities. At that time, there was an engineering faculty open, sponsored by, I think, Nebraska University. The main reason was that those teachers of Kabul Engineering University who skipped Kabul, who flee Kabul, because they were under pressure in the past, prior to 79, Kabul Engineering was sponsored by United States. And most of the teachers or curriculum or all the support were coming from United States, different universities. And that put pressure on them that, okay, you're a spy of America, you're a spy of CIA.
Mm.
They were obliged to flee the country, and then they were, jobless, and most of them had PhD from very prestigious universities of United States. Then they opened this branch for them. Curriculum was coming from United States, from Nebraska University, and then I admitted in that university. The rules and regulation was very strict. There was no second chance. You should get 80% of rank, otherwise you will be dropped. And the first, we applied around 2,500, Afghans. Uh, Only 66 got admission, and 4 years complete without any, break. Uh, we graduated only 11
Mm.
from that university. The interesting thing was that there was no girls in the entire university, although the situation was put a little bit different. But however, I graduated in '92 from
Mm.
I got my certificate and diploma later on from Herat because that university was shifted to Herat. But however, I got my diploma at around 9 o'clock, and then I was able to find job at 2 o'clock the same day in '92. And this was the year when Mujahideen took over Kabul.
Yes.
Yeah. I started working with one of the Afghan NGOs for a short period of time. When I got this job, I came to Jalalabad while the Mujahideen took over Kabul in Jalalabad. And I will become in charge of four provinces: Laghman, Kunar, Nuristan, and Nangarhar. We had some project over there. I was there for a while. Then this was the time the Mujahideen internal conflict started, fighting in Kabul. And then
Mm.
lots of Afghans become IDPs because Pakistan closed the Torkham border and there was no chance for these people. Most of them were the ex-government employees, exactly like the situation, like what happened in August 21. They were stuck there, and then the United Nations decided to establish an IDP camp for them. Then I would become the manager of this camp in addition to being in charge. Over there, somehow, some friends and colleagues of UNICEF, they saw my progress management. And
Mm-hmm.
I was invited to join United Nations. And then this was the year that I joined the United Nations, was 94. And then I was shifted to Kabul. And I have seen this fighting of Mujahideen in Kabul, destruction of Kabul, killing of innocent people. But in the meantime, we were helping the hospitals, providing food. There was no electricity, sometimes, fuel for their generator, for operations and all these things. Then when Taliban took over, still I remain in Kabul. I was working in Kabul. I saw the first era of Kabul with all these difficult times and harsh situation. Although I was working with UNHCR, which was taking care of refugee, and there was a lot of chance to use that opportunity and to flee the country, but somehow I prefer to stay in Afghanistan and do whatever I can. And that working with UNHCR and for returnees and also refugees, because sometimes we were on mission to different countries to interview the Afghan asylum seeker and Afghan refugee, and traveling inside the country, village by village, talking to the people from different, group, from different ethnicity, from different school of thought, from different
Mm-hmm.
generation. That gave me, a sense of, okay, Afghanistan have, common pain. The problem is that we don't have a common understanding from this pain.
Mm.
And then, however, I continued with UNHCR till 2003. In 2001, after that, all this change happened, and in the interim government, I had a friend in UNHCR. His name was Engineer Ibrahim, who was working in UNHCR Kandahar, and he had a close friendship and family relation with President Karzai.
Ah,
And
so this is how you found your way
yes,
into
yeah.
government. Now, just before we get into that, there's so much that's gone in your life. But, as I said to you before we began as well, that your mother's role has been such a prominent role in your life. And what kind of a person she is? You alluded to her becoming a widow at a very young age, and you being the only child.
I'm the only child. When you ask some people who was your hero, role
Mm,
model hero, for me, is my mom, my mother.
yeah. And you
She
got a
is,
photo. I can see two photos on your background. One is her portrait,
yeah,
and the
yeah.
other one is on your left shoulder, is one you kissing her hand.
Yeah, actually, this is the day when I'm going to register in 2019. for presidential election.
Yeah.
This is exactly it. You know, she sacrificed her life for the family and for myself.
Mm.
She never went to school. She cannot read and write. She's a typical traditional Afghan woman. Although her entire family, they were based in Kabul. For example, her sister is now one of the famous female doctor in Kabul. Mm, and then brothers, she had four brothers. Three of them were, member of Democratic Khalq Party.
Okay. Communists.
Yeah, and then another brother was working in field of media, Afghan Elanot at that time they were called it. Uh, but still, she didn't remarry. She from that age, she's sacrificed. For example, this was one of her advice that telling my grand mom and also her family that they should not tell me that she's my mom, because
Mm.
in case something happened to her, then that will distract my education, that will distract my life, that because she didn't want to create that close deep emotional relation between son and mom.
Mm.
uh, if something happened to her because she was sick, that will because of that, I said third grade, I was not understanding who's
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And since that time, all the time, when I face any problem, the since she is with me right now, she's living with me,
Hmm.
and uh, always, I think there is a strong,
There's a
power.
rock behind you.
Yeah, that's emotional, and always, whenever she see that, okay, uh, one of the reason I can tell you, maybe later on, but maybe this is the
Mm.
place when I resigned from India's.
Mm.
A lot of people were, oh, that was not good. She was the only person, and she was happy. She
Mm.
congratulated me, and she said, "That's good that you're out of this job, and I'm very happy for you." This is
Yeah,
how.
but the she, her place in your life and the influence that she's had on you and the impact, of course, the sacrifices that she's had to make in order to raise you and to get you to where you are. Afghanistan society, whatever way you want to characterize, is a very male-dominated, traditional, brutal society. And how did growing up, how did you feel not having a father figure in your life?
I grew up in a middle class educated family, and because of her sacrifice, her brothers also, they were very, kind to me and also to her, because it's a long story to make it short. She also sacrificed for her, because in Afghan culture, we call it badala.
Hmm.
My mom,
Exchange,
yeah,
exchange.
my mom got married to my father, and my father's nephew got married to her brother, to
Mm.
the brother of my mom. This was exchange.
Yeah.
And then somehow, nephew of my father came from village to the city, and my mom gave a sacrifice, went from the city to the village. And then she got all these difficulties in life, and after 1 year or 2 years, 2 years of her marriage, my father passed away, and then she became sick and totally dependent on her family back. And then I was orphan, But since I had the protection of my grandmom and also my uncle, I never had this feeling, okay, I'm orphan and why. But later on, of course, when you see the other kids playing with their families, with their dads, and with their, it gave you some feeling. But
Mm.
of course, but this is not only my unique story in Afghanistan. Because of different, situation, we have a lot of orphans, and that gave at least you share a common pin with
Mm.
others. It's not a unique. That also gave you but particularly when after that, when you grow up, and then when the war started, when a lot of bloodshed was there, and every day this was happening. Somehow you get used to that sort of pain
Mm. Mm.
instead of because in the same classroom, you can say that 20%, 30% of them are orphan. They lost their fathers, their families in the war. That, share, a common pain, and that you get used to that one.
You get to know Hamid Karzai through this colleague. You join the government, you grow through the ranks, and then through the security apparatus of the country, then you're appointed the head of the National Directorate of Intelligence, the NDS,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, when I was working with UNHCR, my colleagues, he was working in UNHCR Kandahar
Mm.
during the Taliban time as well.
Yeah.
And then when this 9/11 happened, on the same night, I was together with the current chief of UNHCR for the world, Filippo Grandi. He was
Mm.
my boss at that time. We were together in the Azra district on that night when this tragic evident incident happened. We were together in Azra district, which is exactly behind Tora Bora.
Okay.
We were monitoring the project, and then anyway, we will receive a call from Kabul from my colleagues who become later on minister that we should be in Kabul by 9 o'clock in the morning because there is evacuation exactly one day after 9/11.
No.
But however, during coming back from Azra district, we were stuck in Lugar, and we were stopped by our convoy was stopped by Arabs, the low rank Al Qaeda. They didn't know, what happened at big because they were low rank fighters from these Misainak,
Yeah, yeah,
caves
yeah, yeah, yeah.
came out. Uh, anyway, then I was called to Kabul, to Islamabad because at that time the office of most of the UN offices were based in Pakistan. Just we had sub offices inside Afghanistan, and my colleagues was called from after all this change from the. He was called from Kandahar, and then over there we become friends. He had because he was based in Kandahar during the Taliban time, and he was from Barakzai tribe.
Mm.
His was chief of Barakzai tribe of Farah. He extended good relation with some leadership of Taliban, like And then anyway, after all this change, and then he joined the government because President Karzai called him to leave UNHCR and work with him. And he became, at that time, the NSC office, which was a new experience in Afghanistan. We never had this sort of institution in the past in the government structure. And Zalmay Rasul became a national security advisor. Engineer Ibrahim became, first deputy. Still, at that time, once I was called, because there was some change in NDS, I was called to become deputy to NDS from UNHCR with Orif Sarwari. Somehow, all sides accepted, but at that time, because Mujahideen was
Yeah,
powerful in
yeah.
this
So
structure,
it was the early
he
days of
rejected.
the government.
Exactly. He rejected. And then I preferred to stay with UNHCR. In end of 2003, again, I was requested, although I had a very good job in UNHCR. I was senior program officer. I had this laissez-passer education grant, insurance, DSA, overtime, all these things. Good income, relatively at those days in Kabul. But I left behind all this. And also I had indefinite contract. There was two different sort of contract. And my next step was to become a international staff after years. But I left everything behind and I joined the NSC office because at that time we were thinking that this is the time to give hands and make our government share what sort of experience we had, what sort of knowledge we had. Because one thing, sometimes some emotional our Afghan fellow or saying that, oh, why these people were there? At that time, there was very few people left in Kabul. I can tell you in 2000, we conducted a survey in Kabul through their Kabul municipality. The total population of Kabul was 600,000. All those who could make it, they flee the country. And at that time, there was no social media, no telephone, nothing to follow up the situation. And I am an eyewitness of that time because of the internal conflict of Mujahideen. And then after, because they push one category of people out of Kabul, like the educated, and then during Taliban, the poverty push another wave of Afghans to flee the country. And then I joined the NSC office as a head of internal affairs because of my knowledge, because of my experience. And during UNHCR, I took several courses of management, different period of time. Somehow that gave me, Karzai he didn't know me at that time. And Zilmay Rasul also didn't know me at that time. But gradually, when they saw that I'm a honest person to my country, this was the time exactly when the State Department decided to hand over the security of the president and palace back to Afghans. I was called by Zilmay Rasul, and he took me to the President Karzai. That he said, we want to have an Afghan institutions for protection of the president, and we select you to take this job and start it from the scratch. I was surprised, and I told them, look, I don't have experience in this. It's a very serious job, and there is a lot of enemy, Al Qaeda, warlords, the smugglers, and corrupt. However, I was pushed and said, no, just this is the sort of management you should apply for it. And I was the first one who started putting the structure in the. At that time, there was a CONEX office in front of, presidential, in the compound near to the president's office. They gave me 2-room with CONEX. We started putting the decree and then the structure, and then there was some local Afghans were trained by United States that they were working with them. But the main decision maker making everything was, they were like daily wage laborers. They were paid. They were not part of organized regular government structure. And then I started from there. Then PPS became PPS. In the beginning, we had a very tough time with the powerful people within the government, because most of them were thinking that now the Americans are out, we can do whatever we want. With how many vehicles, with how many convoys, we can go to the different events. But somehow we were managed, and PPS became aware of one of the national pride from all aspects, from ethnic balance. There was nothing to discuss, percentage from which ethnic group, from which province. We had Gyan Singh from Hindu Afghans, Sikh Afghans. We had from Pashai, we had from Aimok, from all different parts of the country. We had a sort of mechanism. They were feeling pride. We conducted altogether around 560, 70 missions. At that time, on daily basis, one or two president and prime ministers were coming because Afghanistan was on the top priority, and also there was their soldiers. In the meantime, President Karzai was traveling a lot to the provinces. We were able to dismantle several assassination attempts, 4, 5, and one of the famous, which was during this, I think it was 2008, this Mujahideen celebration, victory celebration day.
Yeah.
As a consequence of that, PPS got 1 month salary of bonus, and then the other in charge in other departments and ministry, they were punished. Some of them were arrested, some of them were, because we have done our job. And then in 2010, when the relation between President Karzai and his cabinet and also his chief of India's Amrullah Saleh and Atmar got tense, and then they resigned, or they pushed to resign. They were pushed to resign from Ministry of Interior and also India's. Still, I was working with PPS. It took 1 month. They tried to find somebody to replace him. Engineer Ibrahim, who was also first deputy of India's, somehow he rejected. He said, "No, I cannot do this job." Although he was first deputy of India's for several years, in addition to being first deputy of NSC. And then President Karzai called me. This was the time that already, he know me because I never come up, in media. I was, I went to several training and also monitoring the event of Secret Service in the United States. I was doing my job in my office. This was my management time. Because of that, nobody can find me in any video recorded to be walking. I never, most of the time, the ministers, the jihadi leaders, they didn't know me because I never put paper to them, "Please sign this paper for me. I need this and that." Because of that, when the president decided to introduce me to India's, he already had some other choice. These choices were rejected by Afghan, other partners. I was not the first choice, but however, make it short, 3 times he asked me, and I said, "Mr. President, I cannot do this job. I have this capacity. I have the honesty of doing this job, but I don't have political support because being chief of India's, you are immediately should go after the corrupt officials. You should go after the smugglers, the terrorists, and while I know that there are a lot of things going on within the government, but anyway, for the 3rd time, just to make it short, it was a breakfast. He called me to his office, and when I went there, then Ustad Sayaf was sitting with him in breakfast. And working for, till 2010 in the palace.
Yeah.
Ustad Sayaf didn't know me. I think he raised with Ustad Sayaf that there is a guy, Nabil from Wardak, blah, blah. We want to introduce him. And he said, "We don't know." And then he called me. And then he wanted to show to him that, okay, this is because Ustad Sayaf was pushing for Haji Assad as a law college. Somehow Haji Assad law college was rejected by But however, I accepted, and then I started working with NDS, and then later on we will talk about it. But I shifted from that experience to another experience. I was chief of NDS for 2 years.
What kind of an environment what kind of an institution did you find the NDS to be, and how capable it was when you found it?
The definitely in this of the Republic or Khod of previous government went through a lot of ups and downs. I can say that it was a strong and patriot institutions, but it went wrong when it was used as a political tools for pressing their opponents, like Khod, for example. This should remain national institutions, but as soon as it become an institution for a political party and used as a tools against others, torturing and arresting.
Mm-hmm.
India's first of all, because the first challenge was that when I took over, because the importance role of uh, intelligence agency, everybody wanted to have control of it. When Mujahideen took over Kabul in '92, they had the control, and they implied their own people from their own area, from their own mentality, ideology, their supporter. And then when Taliban took over, that happened in the same manner. And when the change came, because Mujahideen took over Kabul before the Bonn process, that turned back to the same, and then it was under, Jamiat influence till 2010. Uh, of course, there was a lot of, challenge in this regard. Uh, when I took over, the biggest management challenge was that we had three sort of mentality within NDS. One, the ex-HOD officers with a lot of experience, but very narrow, tactical mentality of work. Then Mujahideen, who were still, thinking of, very proud of themselves because they took over by force. And although their level of education was very low at some point, up to 10th grade, but since they had experience of 18 years, altogether working, or even more than that, and then the new generation, which was totally different, like some of these young officers that they were, now at the leadership level of the country, like Yossi Zia, for example, he was working there. Sami Sadat was working there, and Rabi later on joined Indies. But however, this was the difficult portion of it. Of course, working in such an institutions in the middle of war, and then it was just like when you're flying, and then you're fixing in the same times. But compared to all the other institutions, I can say that NDS was one of the institutions that, of course, it was not perfect, exactly, but uh, the success story was more than failures.
By the end of the Republic, I mean, how infiltrated, the NDS had become, not just by, third actors, but of course by the Taliban as well.
I resigned in 2015. Just
Yeah.
let me
Yeah, 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 yeah.
till that time. When I took over, of course, I had a challenge, and then gradually, the parliament, I got the highest vote of parliament in history, because out of 228, members of parliament, I got 208 votes from
Mm.
all group, because during this time they know me that, okay, I'm trying my best to do something good for my country without following any ethnic or any personal desire. Somehow there was some disagreement with some high-ranking Afghan officials, political officials, including late Marshal Fahim, and also, his relation with Karzai and some others. I was removed back from NDS to NSC. And then when the attack took place on Asadullah Khalid after 3 months,
Yeah.
NDS remained open. The leadership, although there was a lot of, they had the deputies. And then I took over. They sent me back from India because this was the demand from India's staff that, okay, please send Nabil back because the things are going. And in the meantime, we had this jirga for the national security agreement with
Yes, with the US.
us, and also the election preparation for election 2014. Because of that, by the end of 2013, I was joined India's. I was sent back to India's as an acting, and I remain acting. They didn't introduce me to the parliament everywhere. During this period, when I was there, and then the election took place. NDS was the only institution which all sides confirmed it remained neutral. UNAMA, Election Commission, Abdullah's group, and Dr. Ashrafani's group, all of them said yes, NDS remained neutral. We were the one who brought up all the fraud issue to the NSC office, to the President Karzai, to Abdullah, because some of them were Qanuni and Bismillah, all of them were part of the National Security Council meeting. And our job was to report to them if they decide, okay, go arrest this, keep figures. While each time we were told that India should not interfere in the election, and also in the election commission, independent election commission, but just your job is reporting. Sometimes some friends are criticizing personal me that, oh, we were part of that. That's totally wrong. I had 4 deputies. Let's say if they think that I never talk about the ethnic. My 4 deputies were Tajik. Yasin Zia was my deputy. Hassamuddin was my deputy at that time. Sudan Darabi was my deputy. And Hussein Fakhri was my deputy. It's 4 deputies. The biggest percentage of NDS, because gradually it came like that, were, different, than my ethnicity. I never think about it because our goals were very high from all these small division. We set up a roof for us very high, just we can walk. Our job was to report. We were not in a position in that critical time to go after somebody and arrest them as intelligence, while it was very clear that nobody should interfere. I went to Nuristani together with 4 of my staff from different, ethnicity, just to make sure that we witness. And I talked to them and I told them, look, the country is going to the right direction. I took this, evidence to President Karzai. He told me, okay, take it to the Nuristani. I went to Nuristani. I took it to the NEC. I took it to everybody responsible to make a decision. But somehow, I think that was the decision to create unity government. UNAMA was aware. US embassy was aware. UK embassy was aware. Nobody mentioned that. Then we went to the unity government. I went together with those to Ashraf Ghani's house. At that time, I was chief of NDS and he was Minister of Interior. And I told him that, look, at that time he was not president. We said, look, Dr. Hussain, your friends took money from you that they will campaign for you in the rural area, in the different cities. They don't have, public support. They took this money, but they committed, fraud.
Election fraud. Yeah.
Yeah, don't trust whatever they tell you. There is a problem. We should try to solve this problem. In the meantime, just to make it very clear, all these tension increased in the second round. Some of the government officials, particularly in police, they start talking about two different, obedience or some of them were saying that, okay, our president is Abdullah. Some of them were saying
Okay.
that the security situation become very crucial. And some people even smuggled the guns inside Kabul and start distribution of gun inside. At that stage, coming out and saying that, okay, this how it happened, that will create a big security disaster. But we were watching situation. We were afraid if that dispute of police been transferred to army, then we are facing a big challenge. But however, then the state secretary when Kiri arrived and resolved this issue. And then I was the only survivor of President Karzai cabinet because of when we remain neutral, both sides and UNAMA and everybody affirmed that, okay, India's remain neutral. And I was kept in my position till I had the dispute on different policy issues with Ashraf Ghani, and I resigned in December 2015.
Given your background, given that you didn't have links and roots to this big political families, big political dynasties, strong tribal backing, I suppose, doing all these senior security roles, did you feel as if you're somewhat of an outsider, that you had to continuously prove yourself?
To be frank, one of the reasons why I resigned, when I saw that being part of this loop, let's say, and then some people were there because of, let's say, ethnic, desire. Some of them for different purpose, some of them, yeah, for the country. And then I start thinking that when President Ghani starts and his group, because they were trying to have India's totally on their side. There was
so they wanted to turn the institution as part of the Ghani's machine to control.
Ghani's machine, yeah, and their own, because some of his people around his, and his circle or kitchen cabinet, they had political agenda for the future and they want to be president. And from this time, Indians can play a very important role, okay, just to pave the path for that. And make scandal against some of them and promote some others. And I was caught up in this. I went to President Ghani several times, in addition to the Pakistan issue and his policy, and that we should give something but take something. It should be given, take. Every time we give something to Pakistan, we didn't got back anything. But there was issues internally as well, and they wanted to use NDS as their main supporting tools for the future. And then Ghani was not listening at the end because it's politics game is very difficult. I was alone. I was not part of Abdullah's team. I was not part of Ashraf Ghani's team during the election. And then there was pull and push inside all these both groups. And then they had access to President Ghani on daily basis. For example, if they wanted to say something against me, they were not telling him directly. Since they were in the same circle, Mr. X was coming home, Mr. President, there is a lot of things going on in India. When we were arresting some people, for example, for uh, just I can give you, we arrested a company with 3,000 illegal weapons, and while there was decree of the government that these companies should be dismantled, these private companies, and that private company provide some security support, small, they know how to play during the election to President to Ani. And then he was told, look, India is more from this ethnic group.
Mm.
They are trying to arrest those people who were supporting you. The same was happening with Dr. Abdullah when you
So the
arrest some.
NDS had become an instrument of power politics or internal power struggle.
Exactly. Yeah. And then they start interfering directly. For example, I can tell you what example. These Tabassum,
Yes,
move
yeah,
was
yeah.
started, and some of our people were killed in Zabul, and then they were trying to take the federal to Kabul. Uh, at that time, my relation was not good, and then because I repeatedly asked President Ghani if you go. He was not willing to talk to me. While in the beginning, on daily basis, I was briefing him on a strategic issue, and also he was calling me. However, when this happened, he sent a message through somebody to me that these.
So just for our listeners who do not know what happened, is a group of Hazaras who were kidnapped in Zabul district in Zabul. It's a Kalat districts in Zabul,
Uh,
and they were
yeah,
held captive and then murdered.
yeah, and
Actually
yeah, and then
beheaded.
yeah, that put a lot of pressure from the public side on the government that why the government was not able to, because at that time the unity government was more. I will come to that one because at that time we got something from some reports from
Mm.
ICE was their plan for. But however, when this happened, they called me that they told me that the federal should not come from Ghazni to Kabul. They should be stopped there. We told them that this is not our India's job. This is the governor job. This is the provincial council job. This is the public service job. This is not. We don't have. Although if we have the military, we should not stand these people because in case something happen, that will be out of control. However, because I don't know this, his advisor at that time, you know who was his advisor, national security advisor? They say that if this federal came to Kabul, then it will be, because there was a lot of big civilized demonstration in Kabul at
Yes,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And then they were advised that they should be stopped. President took his telephone and insulted the chief of India in Ghazni, using very bad words that you should do this. And what happened, he took his car and all this security challenge from Ghazni to Kabul. Next day he came and he submitted his resignation. He said, uh, he told me that I'm a general of India's Afghanistan intelligence. If I'm insulted, if I'm not staying in this job, and he submitted his resignation exactly from that. That it was a situation, and then I decided that if I stay here, then to weakening me, they are trying to weaken the institutions. And then I resigned, and then there is a lot of.
Outside government, you became a very vocal critic of the government. And of course, you amassed yourself a lot of followers. But I also sense that, siding with civil rights activists, human rights causes, siding with peaceful protesters, going against talking about corruption, the dangers of disunity, all these things, and how did that come about? I mean, was there a strategic thinking? Because I have not been a quote unquote warlord, I do not have a powerful base. I need to create my own base. So the young people, the young generation are the ones whom I can mobilize behind me. If I am to be standing for presidential election, they'll be there to support me. I mean, was there this strategic thinking, or was it your inherent value that these are the things that I care about, these are the people and the causes that I need to back?
It was never ever behind all this my strategic plan for it. Uh, I believe on the republic
Mm,
uh, because in republic you should have, instead of using gun, you should be able to share your frustration with because I was thinking at that time when I was giving some example like this Afghan pressure cooker.
yes.
When you block all the holes and then it's boiling, it will be blasted. Let's it come out. Let's engage them in discussion. And this was exactly my policy with my own staff within NDS. And NDS, in the beginning, it was very strict military for military sort of management. And then I went there, for example, when the head of units were entering and then they were doing like this. And then when they were walking back, they didn't turn. And then I said, look, we are friends. We are a member of the same families. We have, a common enemy. We have common goals. We should help each other. We should share okay, this is my plan. These are the obstacles. My position is just to provide support to you guys. And it's not my, job to block you. Come up with a good idea, come up with and because of that, uh, able to make a lot of change. And regarding civil society providing, that was my point, that we should not cover them because that will give them a sense of, okay, when you're not listening, I should find another, source of place for listening. In rural area, that exactly happened. When the ordinary Afghans were approaching the government institutions, and then when they were finding out they were blocking or they were asking for bribe, then they were referring it to the Taliban. For example, the justice departments in some area, that create a lot, gap. And when there is a gap, then of course somebody will fill this gap. My point was that we should not, enlarge this gap. Let the civil society, let the people take their voice in the Tabassum movement.
Mm.
I call their leadership. Okay, that's your right, no problem. What do you need? And then they said, we need, one of them, they said, we need some blanket. I sent them a blanket, several blanket, because that was very peaceful. Demonstration. That was for the well-being of Afghanistan. They were not gun. They were not anti-republic slogan. That was good to happen. And during the Rushnai,
The Enlightenment movement.
Enlightenment, I was not part of the government, but still, I was the first to come out and share my support with them. It was not using as a political, using being as a head of India's, being through all this layer of ups and downs in Afghanistan. I was believing on peaceful dialogue, listening to each other. If I can make 100 families happy with a republic being sitting as a president of Afghanistan according to constitution, then why I should not make this 100 families happy? While there was a big movement behind that, and we were, and you saw that how they copy these conics blocking.
Container boxes.
Content boxes from Pakistan, copied from Pakistan. It was not good. That gradually eats inside the the trees, a tree of Republic like turmoil. What do you
Mm.
call it?
Yeah,
Turmoil.
yeah, yeah.
From outside, it looks very strong, but inside, just a small
It's
wind.
rotten. So
Yeah,
in a sense, the Ghani people and himself and the people who came before and together with him, and of course, he, there's been a tendency to say he was the only one who destroyed the republic. But of course, he was part of a group of or a process that led to the destruction of the republic. So the termites were already in when he came in. He just made them more powerful and fed them more, I suppose.
yeah. There was a lot of hope and respect for Ghani in the beginning. Just let me be very frank, because he was not part of all these ups and downs and what happened in the country. For example, anyway, Karzai was part of Mujahideen group, and he had a lot of engagement with them, and he
But
engaged
but
them.
but he was he really prided himself on being an Ahmadzai. I mean, was he a thing? I mean, did he
So
count?
just coming to that
Yeah,
as
yeah.
I said in the beginning, uh, that was our coming from United States while Obama, a black man, was the president of the main center of power of the world. Being an Afghan scholars, uh, president of Afghanistan, let's put it this way,
Mm-hmm.
there was a expectation that he will come and he will fix things instead of narrowing things, whether it was Ahmadzai or his group and that group. Let me share some of my experience in the beginning with him. When they agreed to form the unity government, uh, before the inauguration, he called me to his house in the palace compound. We call it number 3. I went there and he told me, "What do you have about the corruption in these ministries?" I said, "I have enough document," and I took it. I shared it with NSC at that time. I think my friend Dr. Subspant also wrote it in his book. I shared it with President Karzai as well, but it was not. Uh, there was no attention was paid. Um, there was a lot of that, but big corruption cases between 100,000 to 60 million, and also not just corruption, the structure, the nepotism, the um, all the. He said, "Okay, that's very good. Bring it." And then it took me 2 or 3 days. I asked the department just to prepare it in the different
Mm.
files, and then I put it in one of the pickup trucks behind, and it was 85, 86. Just I'm saying this,
Mm.
our expectation, which what went wrong. I put the corruption file of his group, those who helped him during the election, on the top of it. And Abdullah, and I was thinking just to give him impression, not giving them an impression, the opposite. Okay, this
Yeah,
minister,
go after your opponent.
yeah, just to think that okay, I'm 3 days later, he called me and he said, "Oh, these are very good information, very detailed, very blah blah." And then I was very happy that okay, he will
He likes it.
get rid of some of these bad. And then Abdullah called me, and because at that time when they start forming or agreeing on unity
Yeah,
government,
yeah,
we're
yeah.
talking with each other. And then he all asked the same information and file because they should agree on the cabinet
Yeah.
together. I copy the same files but opposite. On top, those who support Dr. Abdullah. And then I was expecting that next cabinet we will have new faces, clean. But you know what happened? These people came back to most of them came back to the government. Although and they were told that India's reported against you guys, but because they had this cabinet, they were talking to, they were
Mm.
the main core group, and they were afraid if they get rid of this core group, then they will remain alone. After 1 month, uh, an instruction came out of the palace, president office, and also minister of finance at that time. Hakimi was there. All India's staff should be taken out of these ministries. Instead of valuing their work, they were taken out from the customs office, from the ministries. Although some of the ministries, like there should be India staff, like Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but they were taken out.
There was a clear out.
Yeah. From there, you can see that how difficult this job was to remain, neutral, honest, and attached to that. Coming back to that was the reason that we were thinking Ashraf Ghani will but the problem was that he didn't know the local politics. Uh, I doubt that some people are saying that he was the only one. I think nobody will go to that level to put their name and history with the ugly alphabet. But sometimes when you uh, he was played. But of course there were several other reasons from day one of the uh, uh, after even starting from Bonn process,
Yeah.
and the interim government. And then after that, during we had three sort of we had historical issues. We never paid to that one. We never discuss it. We never turn it to a sort of dialogue. There was some internal issues and external issue, and somehow all these three came out. And in the beginning, it seems like events or incidents, and then the what do you call it in Farsi? We call it rusub. Rusubat means layer of these chaos on top of each other, uh, turned to become the I guess 2021. The stateman's job is that to find a good way in difficult situation. Otherwise, if everything is normal, and then it will be not that much, expectation, because the system is working. And in the Afghan situation, that was the expectation, and because of that, the finger go more to his team. That people, let's say, both Abdullah and Ghani, uh, voted them just to take the country out of this chaos.
Yeah. A lot happened since Afghanistan fell. You had been warning against the Republic being destroyed for all the reasons. And you've been living in exile, as many people have as well. And you've continued to ring the bell for the threats that could emanate from Afghanistan. You've continuously talked about, terrorist networks being rebuilt across Afghanistan, and you've elaborated to some extent on your, the people who you're in touch with inside Afghanistan who telling you. How much of a, are people outside Afghanistan interested to hear what you say, or are you just shouting into a void and nobody's really interested?
It's for me, being in exile as an ordinary Afghans, as a Afghans which have a common story with different, generation of my Afghan fellow, because sharing, alerting them is not for, grabbing attention. Somehow it gave me this to feel, as a ordinary and Afghan, give me this feeling that, okay, at least I did a portion of my job, which is not a total job, completely job, raise my voice, share my concern with my Afghan fellow, with the people of Afghanistan and also international community, because I did the same uh, prior to the collapse of Afghan Republic. If you follow my all the conferences and also positions. For example, the first who came out and said, criticized Khalilzad's peace talk and said that this is the uh, proxy peace will bring a proxy war to Afghanistan because Afghans are not aware what's going on. Although I was critical of Ghani's government, but in the meantime, regarding peace process, I was always supporting involvement of Republic. For example, I criticized the Afghan politicians sitting with Taliban in Moscow and bypassing the Afghan Republic, being not part of that. I was in our group was the one who criticized that sort of approach towards peace in Afghanistan or peace dialogue. Right now, yeah, it's difficult to create a momentum, but gradually we are working and we are never hopeless.
Yeah.
Afghanistan, the land of surprises,
But
will.
you've also, you founded this entity, Afghanistan National Liberty Party, this political party, where, when you launched, I remember reading the statement. Um, you talk about historical injustices, you talk about the need for decentralization of power in the country, for long-term stability, and of course, we're recording it on the 1st of September. I think you put on social media a few days ago that you mentioned, the separation of religion and politics in the country, and today you've put it out through a statement to call for that. I mean, there's a lot of these are good, substantial ideas, but there is also a lot of vested interests that would not let these to happen. You're not a young man per se, not that you're old, but you're not a young man who's not lived and experienced the real life to go for idealistic notions of what it would be like to live in Afghanistan, where the power is decentralized, where, you know, politics and religion are separate, where, you've got accountability and equal share of, resources. And, who buys these ideas?
You know, uh, those governments or those nations who succeeded
Mm,
uh, in their histories, their successful story was not happening in one day. It happened step by step. Knowing the situation, having different experience, a group of people came together, shared their thought about how we can take out their nations or country out of this crisis. A lot of people insulted them, threw stones to them, killed them. But after 50 years, 60 years, they came up. Oh, there was a group, they were talking about it. And, Afghanistan, the new generation, I think you're in touch with the global. If Taliban think that Afghanistan is the same as 96, I remember at that time, just to make a call to Germany or to Canada and to family members or friends, please send me $100. My kids are dying because of hunger. To Quetta and Peshawar. Now 22 million Afghan in rural area and urban area, they have access to telephone. 8 million, more than 8 to 10 million, around 10 million have access to the social media. We are reaching to the situation that, for example, the younger generation of the right now, we post this, already post this age of hope, and then what we call broken this hope, standing and falling, standing and falling. We are sharing all these, what we've said, this based on experience and based on successful story of other nations. We come up with the decentralized, because Afghanistan collapsed all the time. Too much decentralized and too much centralized. Mujahideen is a good example of decentralized. They start fighting with each other. Who control which street, which province, which district. And centralized was just like Taliban, current one, previous one. During Republic, there was 147 recorded dispute between the provinces and the center, who should be the governor or who should be the mayor. One of the problems started when the rural area or, they start thinking that we are not part of the system. We are used as a tools, but we are not part of the system. We should make this, two ways road between the rural area and urban area. We should give a choice to each people of each province. If we appoint somebody from Uruzgan, from Georgia, let's say, to host, they don't know the culture, they don't know the language, they don't know the diversity. It takes them a lot of time, and then that they are marginalized. Instead of being engaged with the people, that create more distance. Instead of that, if we say, okay, this person is from Sharana, this person is from, Tanai, this person is from center of host, his education, his father, his grandfather, they should present their, and then people should select their governors. Each governor should have some, during these 20 years, based on my experience as a chief of Indias and then politics, and that there were governors that they are now they have million dollar from the income tax office. But there were some governors that when they were visiting a village and the villagers were asking, Mr. Governor, the rain damaged this madhouse mosque, this corner of this madhouse mosque, please help us some to fix the mosque. He didn't have that authority. Or projects were selected in Kabul, contracted in Kabul, and these contracts were taking people from their village, let's say from Kunar, from skilled labor to daily wage labor, all of them, let's say, to Daikundi. And then people Daikundi were saying that, look, first of all, this project is not my priority. My priority is something else. You selected in Kabul. You selected the contractor in Kabul. And then the contractor selected the skilled laborers and even daily wage laborers from his village. And while my young, villagers are dying in Iran or in Pakistan looking for job. That gave them, okay, that's your government. You take care of it. I should not bother myself in protecting that. That was what the reason. The second one, which we come up that, for example, I say that some of political elites of Pashtun and then Tajik should come out and apologize. Forget about the war criminal issues. This is something that we didn't, because anyway, to be frank, these were the two groups that they were controlling the main power in Afghanistan. In 20 years, they were Minister of Interior, Minister of Defense, Chief of Indias, Minister of Finance, President, Deputy, and also before that. What is the situation? Sometimes I'm calculating. We lost at least 2.5 million Afghans in these 45 years of war, during the war, from all different, sides. If you calculate the area of that graveyard, it's bigger than Qatar area.
Landmass.
Land, yeah. But still, when you see that uh, number of refugee out of the country, when you see that, but when we are sitting and we are very proud of our history, we're very proud of our landscape, while nobody is happy to stay there. This is our failures of our elites, political elites. We could not work on nation building because we were thinking that some of them were thinking that even nation building should happen, should other country, do it for us, while this was purely our job. That was another different approach which we had on the separation of whether we call it separation on. We are seeing that Taliban and also some others using religion as a tools for their power, taking power. They are damaging the values of traditional religion which we Afghans had, which was more with the manner of respect each other, respect the values of human being. Now we see some of the old clips and videos of, let's say, 1960s, 1966 of Afghanistan. People were coming to Afghanistan. They were proud of taking the stories of hospitality, stories of, good stories. But now we are stuck with this repeatedly and repeatedly. We are saying that we, as a Muslim country, we should respect the religious, because these are the Taliban who disrespect the religion. They are using religion as their private tools, which put us in very difficult situation, put us in very difficult, and had a lot of, impact and consequences. Even during Mujahideen, Mujahideen was doing the same as this Muslim Brotherhood or Ikhwani. They were doing the same. And that is started, and since that time, if you go to the history, gradually we are more divided, we are more disputed on, we are more disagreeing on values. We should take a risk, we should come up, we should put, we should talk and somehow come up with a new narrative. We cannot build Afghanistan on this old narrative.
So you just mentioned the narrative, and we've really 3 years since, and all the leaders, shall we call them leaders? Shall we call them, powerful men who left Afghanistan, and all of them have found themselves somewhere to live. But there have been a lot of talks from the sidelines, but there has not been, there has been a lacking of narrative, an alternative narrative that is credible, presented by these men, because they're largely men. I mean, that Afghanistan. But also, there's also been this lack of, when they talk about changing Afghanistan, or at least for some who wants to see the end of the Taliban, they always look west for a source of support. But I know that there's no interest from, in the real world, there's no interest from the West in getting their hands that dirty in Afghanistan again. And the Taliban's success, to a large extent, was also dependent on them being strategic in the relationship that they built with the regional powers. Now, I have not seen any sign of, you guys rebuilding a relationship with regional actors or regional powers to say, okay, we are people in the neighborhood. We cannot take Afghanistan as a country and plant it somewhere in the West. We are neighbors, we are friends, we have to live side by side. We are locked by geography. These Taliban, these people are not your friends. They cannot sustain Afghanistan. We are the people who can offer you an alternative. But why has that alternative narrative not materialized? and B, why that relationship's not being built by these men?
Yeah. First of all, I think, after the collapse of Afghanistan, somehow most of the Afghans, for a while, they were shocked,
Mm.
shocked situation. And then the international community and also even some Afghans were thinking that because during and after the Doha deal, there was a lot of propaganda that Taliban has changed. The change will come gradually. And since Afghanistan went through several, war and fighting, people were waiting. Okay, the change will come from Taliban, and schools will be open. They will. But it went opposite. And I think 3 years in such a situation which Afghans are facing or Afghanistan is facing is not a long time. But of course, there should be sorted. I'm totally against that. We should blame outside for everything. First, we should come up with, because we have three lacks. Let me put it this way. We have the lack of clarity, what we want. Right now, when you talk to Afghan elites, it's difficult to find something similar. We are talking lack of vision. What sort of Afghanistan we want? Taliban government sort of Afghanistan, Mujahideen sort of Afghanistan, let's say Republic sort of Afghanistan, because that its own problem. You cannot create new narrative based on all those. Let me put it very clear. The third lack is, consensus. When you don't have this clarity, when you don't have vision, then the consensus is not there. We are, as a party, we are trying to talk with different groups to, instead of knocking the doors of each Ministry of Foreign Affairs of others, we should sit together first. Consensus will come after going through different stages. First, we should get to the root cause of the problems in Afghanistan, whether it's social, historical, economical, internal policy, external policy. We should go through, without insulting each other, we should, through a group of, academics, we should sit together as a second stage. What are common values in Afghanistan, whether it's good or bad? Poverty. The girls of Badakhshan and the girls of Nuristan and the girls of Daikundi and Helmandi and Kandahari, they are facing the same poverty. Education, insecurity, division. Those are the things that we should find common understanding for our common pain. Because somehow we are divided, even our pain has been divided through these lectures about the divisions from day one. Communist, Mujahid, and then Jami, Hizb, and then Khalq and Parchaman till now. That's second phase. Third phase, okay, this is the root cause. This is still we have these values. We don't have Afghanistan to go to the push to the dark era, which is internal conflict, which is again failures which and then we are trying to push it to the white area, Afghanistan, common sense of ownership, joint ownership, developed country and house home to everyone. There are some gray area. We are not agree on those gray area. You see it from one angle, exactly what I said, lack of clarity. We should talk about it. The third step is coming with a new social agreement where girls from, let's say, Kunar or Nuristan or Nimroz or Dilaram or Zaranj had equal rights with a tribal chief of Nurzai or Popalzai or Achikzai or Badakhshan or Panjshir, where a disabled from Dani Ghuri had the same, uh, you know, rights, access to all the facility as ministers or ex, ministers have. Plus human rights, plus, all these, why we failed. Of course, there are some like respect to the religious and their place in new sort of politician where everybody see themselves, lessons learned, and then put it in a new social agreement. In the fourth level layer will be, consensus, at least on some certain issues. At that time, we can call it, okay, this is the roadmap for the future of Afghanistan.
You've got all these, high-minded aspirations for your country, which is absolutely fine. And, everybody does that. But you've also got, there is a lot of, there's an undertone of pessimism and in your proclamations and statements. For example, I saw one of your tweets today. I think you said, it may seem calm, everything may seem calm under the Taliban, but beneath the surface, there's a storm brewing, and that storm going to be deadly. So, you've got all high-minded hopes and brilliant ideas to rebuild Afghanistan and bring it to proper to the 21st century, which will take a lot of time and resource, of course, and a lot of hard work. But also there's this undertone of pessimism about and gloom about the prospects for the future of Afghanistan. So, do you see the Taliban being removed in some way? Do you see given your connections and of course the security links, do you see the Taliban reforming itself through power struggles, or do you see a push from the outside, i.e. the anti-Taliban groups? Or do you see an implosion of the country into this, the pressure cooker that you mentioned, the Taliban are creating? What are your most feared scenarios at the moment, the likelihood of those being realized?
Yeah. Just coming first to the tweet, when I say that, okay, that it seems calm, because, of course, there are a lot of, proxy groups preparing, to take over some area. Like I will not go in detail, but this is the fears that everybody had inside Afghanistan as well. That, regarding, none of the government has been thrown by international community in Afghanistan. It was always thrown by people. I remember when these Communist Social Party took over Afghanistan. At that time, I was going sometimes from city to the village, in school age. And I was still remember these, farmers in the rural area erecting the red flag on their houses. So support to the government. Mm. And after 3 years, we saw what happened. When Mujahideen took over, I remember people were throwing flour, and what happened. I was in Kabul when Taliban took over in 96. In Makrian, I was standing when the educated people of, Kabul was throwing flour to them. We remember the Republic when there was the first election. We saw, elderly woman of 104 came in rural area and voted for Republic. And later on we saw. This is exactly what will happen against Taliban, because Taliban cannot deliver. They are not a group of, delivering. They are a group of taking. In this 20 years, they took from people. They didn't give to the people. They took their life. They took their construction. They took their institutions. They took their food, because they never paid for the food. And now this is a time they should give, and they cannot give. They are taking their freedom, their social life, their education, their future. When they take your future, how long people will wait for them? Because they love them, their appearance? No. Because of that, it's very important to work on a political platform, because right now for the people inside Afghanistan, the throwing Taliban are not a big concern. The replacement of Taliban is a big concern. As soon as you come up with new narrative, which is acceptable to the, let's say, rural area and urban area, or tribal chief, good religious scholars, even some Taliban, let's put it this way. When you have these four pillars together, I can tell you there will be change in Afghanistan, because change always came from Taliban will not just throw by B-52. This is not true. This was the people who came out, and you can see this happiness everywhere. You saw the what happened to some of the Republic, tanks. People were trenched. Yeah. And this is something, because when you not give to the people and always take from the people, there will be reaction. In Afghanistan, that will happen. Yeah, there are some own resistance that let's appreciate what they do, but this is a very long solution.
Yes. Now, Mr. Nabil, I mean, we've been talking for about almost 2 hours, and we could talk all day. I'm so grateful for your time. You know, you've been through so much, as everyone in Afghanistan have. Looking back to your life, and now you're living in exile, how Rahmatullah Nabil, the person, feels. You know, the emotions, the past traumas, the dealing with tragedies. How do you feel? I mean, have you come to terms with it? Because culturally, Afghan men and of course politicians, like everyone, is that they're not people who talk about their emotions. I mean, how do you feel? You know, Rahmatullah Nabil, the Rahmatullah Nabil, not the politicians, not
Yeah.
the former spy master.
You know, sometimes when I sit alone and talk about my past and what sort of hope I had. For example, when I was traveling on the top of, let's say, the big truck full of these balut wood, and
Mm,
carrying a bag full of the bread, boiled egg, and walking and for several days to go to study and have a hope for the future. And then I see that these sort of hopes has been spoiled several times of different generation. At that stage, I feel responsible. Responsible. This means that I'm in an age of, I can say that transitional generation. I have seen myself all these, problem which the current generation is facing. And also I can judge the failures of our previous leaders, like jihadi leaders, political leaders. And that put us, in my age, politicians, more responsible, because we know their failures, the past failures, and we know the current situation of the new generation. We should be act as a bridge between these failures and the future success. And one of the reasons sometimes I think differently when I come out and talk about the things differently, it's difficult sometimes for the new generation to digest it. And also it make upset the previous generation, because they are thinking I'm attacking their business,
mm,
and which is, but this is sometimes we feel because of that. I left my families. I left um, my job. I resigned, and then I stayed in Afghanistan. It is very common in Afghanistan, mostly when they are removed from the position, then they had their passport and they go directly from their office to the airport. But I stayed there. I came out, talked to about any about the failures in during election. I knew what is going to happen, but this was a stage I wanted to pass my message to people, okay, we should think differently. The group should structure differently. We should support the republic, but in the meantime, we should criticize the wrongdoing of this turmoil inside these three. And I left Kabul on 8th of August. I had reports, I had analysis, and I had the experience of collapse. I left Kabul on 8th of August, and I wrote a tweet on 14th of August, before, one day prior to the President Ghani escape from Afghanistan, that one era has been collapsed, another era, which will be very harsh for Afghans, have been started. That's the reason sometimes I should, let me put it this way, you said emotion. One side push my hope down. Okay, nothing will. On other side, I said, no, this is not true. We should give hope. We should try our best.
But did you cry?
I'm a little bit difficult person in this regard, but yes, sometimes I can tell you, maybe one day my kids will publish it. The last year of Republic, sometimes when I was sitting together alone, then I was talking because I was recording for myself. Suddenly it was coming that because it touched my hopes of the past, and then I cried. Difficulties never, because I have been through different life. I've slept on the stones. I can, survive without food for 2-3 days, and still being active. But sometimes, as a human being, and having a lot of hopes for my country, for the future, for the that affect us. Yeah.
And how do you envisage your return to Afghanistan one day? When you daydream, I suppose. How do you envisage going back to Kabul?
Even sometimes when I talk with some of my friends, that being a patriot is not just from outside. I decided several times, okay, put a note together. I'm coming to Kabul, going to Kabul, but I will still keep my way of thinking. I will not surrender to Taliban. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. If they arrested me, that's fine. But then some friends, no, it's not time for emotion, because then what will happen? You don't know, being chief of Indias for a long time, and you have a lot of enemy, not inside a country, maybe outside the country as well. From some neighbors, it will not help your emotion. Your course. If it was normal situation like other country, although it was then you can say, okay, I'm coming to do my political struggle, just like I was doing it in Republic. In Republic, exactly, that was my son. And even one time I was announced state of prohibiting going out of the country. They issue restriction of going back to Kabul from at that time during Republic time, but that is fine, the sport of the Republic's struggle. But yeah, we will go one day to Kabul.
One day, on that beautiful, wonderful hope. Rahmatullah Nabil, thank you so much. You've been so generous with your time. I'm really grateful. It's been such a pleasure.